shinle yarngoda belge drolor zambe zeparchi pandela me shabla solwa de Oma Guru Vajradara Sumati Munisha Sanekar Utta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Oma Guru Vajradara Sumati Munisha Sanekar Utta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Oma Guru Vajradara Sumati Munisha Utta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Oma Guru Vajradara Sumati Munisha Sanekar Utta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Oma Guru Vajra Utta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Oma Guru Vajradara Sumati Utta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Oma Guru Vajradara Sumati Munishasa Utta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Oma Guru Vajradara Sumati Munishas Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Pakyuke kudandagi lo pakyuke sundandagi nga pakyuke tugdandagi yin tyerme chikto chingi lo makyuke kudandagi lo Ma kyuke sundandagi nga Ma kyuke tugdandagi yi Tyerme chiktu chingi lo Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Swaha Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Swaha Om Muni 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 Shakyamuni Swaha Sashipuki Choshimeto Chamari Rabalingashin Nide Gempadi Sange Shintu Mikte Ulwarki Drokunam Dashinla Chöpar Shoyidam Guru Radna Mindrala Kam Niryatayami Sangye Chedan Tsoge Chanam La Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapsu Che Dagi Chishe Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchire Sangye Drupare Sho Sangye chonam la chancho pardo dani kyapsu chi. Sangye chöda ngon gabla jenare mikse goyendo torni konso chigre nanda yomare shuna shu chokre ya tusu nana mikse tenda torma dal sama destrudice. Nel Buddha, nel Dharma e nel Sangha prendo rifugio fino all'illuminazione. Con la pratica della generosità e delle altre perfezioni, possa io ottenere lo stato di Buddha per il beneficio di tutti gli esseri senzienti. In the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, I take refuge into enlightenment through the practice of generosity and the other perfections. May I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. Namo yal haye ke da ludan nejin ke drupon da mi ke nam dan drowo kun ke danam chi tsampa tamche ke tu da gi che ten tamche ke tu da gi che ten. Buongiorno. Immaginiamo un momento in cui parliamo con qualcuno. Ok? Siamo davanti a una persona, gli diciamo qualcosa riguardo qualunque argomento sia esse, però per riuscire a immaginarlo un po' meglio, immaginiamo un momento nel quale la conversazione che noi facciamo con quella persona ha anche un componente emozionale un po' più intenso. Ok? Ce la facciamo immaginarlo, no? E noi andiamo lì e diciamo qualcosa a quella persona. Quello che andiamo a dire e il modo che andiamo a dire ha un effetto su quella persona o no? Okay. Quindi il modo che noi parliamo, quello che diciamo, eccetera, eccetera, interagisce con l'altra persona e quindi a secondo di come la persona lo vive ha un effetto piuttosto che un altro. Ovviamente non dipende solamente da chi parla, dipende anche di chi ascolta, no? Di come arriva quello. Ma il mio punto è, quando io parlo a un'altra persona, oltre che interagire con quella persona, quindi avviene una trasformazione nella persona, e quindi giustamente devo stare attento a cercare di interagire in un modo sano, per il meglio dell'altro. Quando io sto facendo lo stesso evento, io mi trasformo anche o no? Io non sto parlando di quello che l'altro dice, sto dicendo del momento in cui io parlo, il modo in cui parlo, quello che dico, quello che faccio, quello che sento, mi trasforma? Io naturalmente interagisco con le mie azioni. Ok? E molto spesso il modo in cui noi ci relazioniamo con gli altri riguarda sia gli altri, ma molto spesso dobbiamo guardare una parte che spesso non guardiamo, che riguarda anche noi stessi. E qua apro e chiudo una parentesi veloce, che non era l'argomento di oggi, però in qualche modo arriva. Siamo egoisti o no? Siamo sinceri, nel senso che quanto ci teniamo all'io e al mio? Tanto, no? È una delle forze che ci spinge a fare quello che facciamo. Questo non toglie il fatto che ci sia compassione, ci sia amore, ci sia empatia, ci sia il fatto di voler aiutare gli altri. Tutto quello ci sta anche, però alla base la priorità spesso diventa l'io e il mio, no? Ed è interessante osservare come il sentiero spirituale, che se uno cammina correttamente, piano piano si trasforma trasforma in uno stato di profondo altruismo, la partenza dipende dall'egoismo. La forza che spinge questa partenza è l'egoismo. In altre parole, dal momento in cui tu ti accorgi che egoisticamente parlando, everything okay there? Ok? In quale canale siete? Ok, no problem, we wait. Aspettiamo un attimino perché, come io dico sempre, la traduzione, che oggi la Daphne sta traducendo, siamo più quelli che parlano italiano che devono avere la gratitudine, perché se no mi toccherebbe qua parlare tutte le due lingue, come ho fatto tante volte, piuttosto che, quindi giustamente creiamo, no? Assicuriamoci che stia funzionando per quello. Om Vajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajra Sattva Tenopa Tishta Didro Me Bhava Sutto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anurakto Me Bhava Sarva Siddhi Me
Okay.
You hear Lama? You hear Lama?
Sì.
Okay.
No, ma I heard him on the other one as well. È hace un anno che non ha preso. Ok. Ok.
Canta con lui.
Vajra Bhava Maha Samaya Sattva
People
All right.
hear you.
Okay, I apologize. I think that was my fault, so I apologize. So when we start our spiritual journey, so the force that allows us to propel ourselves on this path is our own selfishness, in that we don't want to suffer. At the beginning of this, an important step is at the beginning to learn to be a bit selfish, which what does that mean? It means being obsessed with I and mine, the obsession of self-gratification. Okay, that's right. I can't expect someone who's selfish not to be selfish. We can gradually accompany that person in the process of evolution to not be selfish. But if I want happiness, well, if I'm selfish and I don't want to suffer and I want to be happy, at least do the right thing. So, as it's written here, there's a verse here. So if you discover something, as it's written in the book, the text we're reading, if you discover something that works, we'll put it into practice. If we really want to be happy and not suffer, let's do the right thing, at least that. In this process, naturally, when we start traveling on the path, we come to understand that, selfishly speaking, we come to understand that the obsession with I and mine, that selfishly speaking, it's better to be altruistic. It's better to find a real compassion and altruism. But we can't expect ourselves to be something that we're not. We need to travel along the path to evolve. All right, let's get back to where we were. When we talk to somebody, as I was saying, what happens with the other person depends prevalently is how the other person lives it, okay? How experiences it. We are conditioned in the way of speaking, etc., to interact with the internal condition of the others, thoughts, mental state, etc., and that comes together, and the causes that the person has created in the past. So that creates the individual personal experiences. If you try to help somebody and it doesn't work, there are times there are times even when you try to hurt somebody and the other person likes it. When we do something to the other, what I say doesn't determine what the other perceives. It's only in a part of that. But what I say, the way I say it, the way I interacts, first of all, with myself. So it's very important for us to remember that when we're with people, in front of certain situations, the way we behave and present ourselves, first of all, is useful for ourselves. It's not that I have to be respectful and loving, otherwise God knows what happens. No. Well, okay, it's better, but if I'm loving and kind, etc., it's good. But firstly, because it's good for ourselves. What quality do I want to cultivate? Do I want to be agitated, dissatisfied, arrogant, overpowering, angry, full of rancor? Or do I want to be somebody who's generous, stable, joyful, satisfied, loving? What do I want to be? And that will determine how I act. And this is exactly the next verses today. It's the last day of this course, so I'm not going to go slowly. We're going to read it quite quickly. It says, see, we saw yesterday. Okay, so yesterday we saw the verse says, refrain from idle gossip and always guard your speech. So we said many times that speech must be used with respect because it has an enormous effect on our minds, both in transforming ourselves and also interacting with others and transforming others. Is that clear? Therefore, let's try to give value to our word. Let me just open a parenthesis. The way, all right, the less careful I am with my word, the less respect, the less value I give to my own speech, the less value it has. And it's the person who gives a great deal of respect and value to his own speech and is careful with what he says, tries not to lie, etc., and who knows how to give value, has a speech which is more powerful, and the other respects that person more, and it has a greater impact. Unfortunately, we live in an epoch when we give increasingly less value to speech. There's, for example, we say, oh, I'll put my hand on fire. There was once when actually that had a great value. And giving your word, which has had a great value, much greater than any contract. But now we've become used to lies, in the sense that the public contexts, from politicians, newspapers, that you can lie, Or do you see that? It's part of the dynamic in politics, to point the finger at the other, to look for defects, to create falsehoods against the other person. And if it's true or not, who cares? The important thing is that it has that effect in the moment. And when we see, in general, we ourselves give increasingly less value to our own speech. But it's very important for ourselves to give value to our own speech. I said, and I maintain that. It's not convenient, but I gave my word, and that's it. So we should be always aware of what we say, because what we say transforms ourselves and has an effect on everything. We should be careful with the way we use the word. When we find whenever you see your masters or preceptors, your teachers, cultivate the wish to serve them with respect, both those possessing eyes of Dharma and those first setting upon the path are to be regarded as your teachers. And when encountering any other beings, look upon them as your own parents or children. When I find myself with someone who teaches me, who's teaching me, who's guiding me, if I have a respectful attitude or not towards that person, it's important to me in the first place, because the more I respect that person, the more I value what that person gives to me. The same things said by other people has the same effect. If somebody to whom we have no regard says something or something and somebody else says the same thing, does it change or not? Once we trust someone to guide us, to teach us, we have experience, etc., etc. Once the more value I give, the more value I obtain in return from my teacher or guide. And what happens is that our external conduct is not so important on one hand. Really what is important was what we feel inside, because the best way to expect our spiritual guide is to put into practice what he or she teaches. There's not a greater offer, doesn't exist a greater offer than that. But what happens at the same time is that, and I'm talking about personal experience here, when we cultivate an attitude of giving, a respectful attitude of giving value and not seeing the other with indifference, this helps us to give importance to what is being said. Because what happens is that when we have a relationship with somebody who guides us, for example, on the spiritual path, it's not said that that which is given or shown to us is pleasant to us. We might not like it. What I've seen over the years, when our master tells us something we don't like or shouts at us, what happens is that is a sign of faith in our relationship. Because somebody said once to me, Lama, everybody loves you because you're Lama. It's not so obvious, because I've noticed, yeah, they say that as long as I'm doing what they like and say what they like. The the moment I say something they don't like, or the behavior that I don't like, and or what I do doesn't correspond to their expectations, boom, finito. Let me give you a kind of forced example. As if we had the example, we put our leader on a pedestal, and then we have a gun, and we're looking through the sight, waiting to shoot the gun. Okay, that's an extreme example. I'm talking about not only on the spiritual path. I'm talking about generally. So I give you all this important, but if you don't correspond exactly to my projections onto you, that's no good. Is that clear, that dynamic? When we trust somebody really, we're ready to receive things that we don't like. 2 anecdotes. Once I was with Lama here in Albagnano, and something a bit strange happened. Oh, it's many years now when I come to think of it. Let's say 15 years ago. I had a commitment with a friend to go to the cinema. I went with his friend, let's say, once a year, very rarely, because he liked going to a particular cinema which was very luxurious, with a nice screen, with great sound and comfortable seats, near Milan, Melzo. And that day we had a commitment to go, an arrangement to go. Okay, I went to Milan, I was going to teach, but I was here, and there were so many people here, the Tibetans, etc. And Lama Ganchen said, okay, Lama Ganchen said, seeing that you're going to Milan, can you take money? So I said, oh, sure, no problem. Okay, you can come with me. At a certain point, I went to the cousin. He said, look, I'll take you, but I'd actually planned to go to the cinema afterwards, and then outside Milan, and go back from there. So if you don't mind, I'll take you to the cinema. Is that okay? Okay, it's a nice film, nothing particular. And she says, what did she say to me? I don't like the cinema. Okay, you don't like it, but it's not a torture. I'm doing the favor of taking you to Milan. Come on, you can be 2 hours in the cinema. After a while, there was a moment where there were so many people, all Tibetans, and Lama Ganchen started shouting at me, and which he'd hardly ever done, less than number of fingers on the hand. And he said in Tibetan, something like, in front of all these Tibetans, you go ahead and hide your dirt. And you'll see that you'll break your head. Something really, really heavy in front of everybody. And I hear that, and I say, I breathe. I see inside of me, the first reaction is to want to be defensive. Because of what had happened, that the niece had gone to Lama Ganchen and said, I don't want to go. He had absolutely no problem about me going to the cinema. But what I did was stop, breathe, just try and see what's happening in this moment. Don't go on the defensive. Okay, I said, okay, I'll take it to Milan. No, and Lama Ganchen said, no, not now. And I said, oh, I'll take her. I called my friend, and we arranged to go to the later showing. So I took her to Milan. But the main point is, having allowed myself not to go on the defensive, because I had total, complete faith in Lama Ganchen's. I've always been convinced that he would never do anything that would be not beneficial to me. So I said, okay, what's happening? And I realized there was a small part of me that being together with Lama Gachan is a very joyful person, very open, with whom there was absolutely no taboo. You could talk about absolutely anything. I never met anybody so open as him. At the same time, he lived 24 hours a day, dedicated to others at the same time. So he had this habit of having no rules. Okay, so what happened? I actually felt guilty because it was something for my pleasure, entertainment, but he would never have told me that that was not good. But having that sensation that maybe it wasn't a good thing, I saw that I was beginning to start something very subtle, not to lie to him, but not to say what I was doing because somewhere I felt guilty. I don't know if that's clear. Therefore, so there was this habit of hiding. When there's something very clean, all you have to do is to make it a tiny bit dirty, and that dirt takes more and more space. And when we have a relationship with total transparency, when we have a very, let's say if we have a relationship, we can lose the spontaneity in that relationship when there's a bit of dirt. And that dirt takes more and more space. But when we actually see it where there's a distance, we've lost the spontaneity in the relationship. But having a very pure relationship with him, this is my interpretation, this is how I lived it, having realized what was happening, because he knew me better than I know myself. Having seen that, he just cut it at the root. I'm very grateful, but if I hadn't had the faith in him and the respect, which has protected me from being on the defensive. Somebody else who maybe didn't have faith or respect, he would have given him a piece of his mind. In certain terms, I'm going. Would have reacted very badly. The fact that I have that deep respect protected me from an excessive reaction and permitted me to see what was the root of the problem. And for example, Lama Gachan told me to do things that were the exact opposite of what I thought I should have done. But out of respect and faith, I did them, and years later I found that he was right. Another anecdote. When I was very small, I'm talking about me, because talking about other people, therefore I prefer to talk about my own experiences. As a child who knew me when I was very small, also in the Buddhist context. So everybody said I was like an old man when I was a child. In fact, I'm becoming more and more younger, younger and younger, because I started out being like an old man. I was very serious, square, rigid on things like traditions, etc. But spontaneously, I was like that. And one day, when I was in India, there was a telephone. There was just one telephone in the monastery. Apart from and it wasn't in my house, so apart from the fact that very often somebody would call and say, I want to speak to so-and-so, and you'd have to go and get so-and-so. When I spoke to Michel, when I used to speak to him, I couldn't speak to him sitting down, because when I was in his presence, I got up and I bowed down. My master made fun of me. Hey, it's the telephone, you're not in front of him. Why are you getting up and down the whole time? Just to say, this thing of respect, I lived very spontaneously. One day, I was like 13, 14 years old. I was in Italy, where we didn't have the center here in Albagnano, only in Milan, in Via Marco Polo. And I go into Lama Ganchan's bedroom. Of course, as usual, there were always many people. Well, it was a tiny room, so let's say there were 10 people maximum. And it was full this time. So he had a kind of futon. It was an attic. So he was in the middle. So it was an attic at the top of the house, attic room. Everybody was sitting on the floor, and he was on the bed. And there wasn't anywhere to sit down. So I go and sit in the corridor in front of his room. And he looks at me, hey, come here, sit next to me on the bed. I said, oh, no. Because for me, it was a total lack of respect to be on the same level as him. Nobody taught me, but that's the way it was for me. But traditionally, that's the way it is. I said, no way. And he insisted, come on. I said, well, what's worse, sitting there or not doing what he told me to do? So I sit down, right on the corner of the bed, really uncomfortable, very embarrassed, uncomfortable, not very happy at all. I felt uneasy. And the next day, the next similar situation, I go, okay, come here. And then I felt no unease the next day. And then a few days later, same thing. There was room on the floor, but where did I go? On the bed, as if it was normal. What I realized is that not respecting that formality, there was something in me that changed. Very subtle, microscopic, but there was something. And from that moment, okay, I said, from now on, I can't do it anymore because it changes everything very easily. Just a grain of sand that gradually starts to create, how do we say? Interferences in the purity that exists. External formality, on one side, it's not worth anything. Because if I behave like that, but inside I have a different attitude, better not to do it. But if I have that sentiment, that external attitude helps me to cultivate that internal attitude. If they correspond, if I give value to somebody, it's right that I manifest that value in the way I react externally. As if I were to say, if I go into a room, there's somebody there, and I don't say hello. What's the message that I give to myself? I'm indifferent to your presence. And also the message to the other person, obviously, but to myself. I don't care if you're there or not. The more I do it, the greater the indifference becomes. The more I go there and say, buongiorno, hello. And I get up, I say hello. What does that mean? I develop my non-indifference internally. Therefore, the way I behave towards other people, even with let's say in parentheses, formal, the way we speak, informal, sorry, the way we speak, the way we, our attitude. Okay, so when I used to go to my maestro, I always gave 3. For example, the master of Lama Ganshin, you can see here. So I always used to do 3. His master, Paponka Devchin Rinpoche, which we can see, where you can see the translation booth. There are 5 images. The one in the middle, Paponka Rinpoche. When he went to see his master, he walked across the mountains. He walked. When he arrived, he passed through a valley, and he saw the monastery in the distance. He started right then doing prostrations. So he said before, as I did with my master, 3 prostrations, and I walked out backwards. And when he left, he did that, went backwards until he could no longer see the monastery, until it was out of sight. Why? Not because one has to do this. Because you want to cultivate the gratitude of faith, respect. That helps oneself, yourself, in the path. If I go to to a doctor, and I have a lot of respect to that doctor, helps me to follow the treatment. Is that true or not? If I go to the doctor and I go, well, I don't really like this. Okay, the first thing he says that I don't like, I say, okay, you don't follow that advice. But if I have respect, strong effect, I follow. So that's the importance of choosing the doctor well. When Atisha said, when we manifest respect to others, we cultivate something different in ourselves. We cultivate the capacity to see the other, affect gratitude. And if the relationship with someone who transmits something important to us, helps us to give value to that. But also within a family or with friends. If I give a lot of respect to somebody in my family, if I give value to the presence of the other, if I don't take for granted the other, and with physical acts, with practical things, I nourish that attitude, that gratitude, the fact that not take for granted the other person, etc. The moment in which, so I live the moment much more intensely, and with more meaning. Is that true or not? If I start taking for granted that person, regardless of how much I love that person or what happens, there's a kind of sort of neutrality that arises. And at a certain point, that no longer is that presence that there was before. And at the end, and then what happens, and once you've lost that person, then you begin to value the other. When we cultivate, however, every day, our daily life, this respect, gratitude, and love, material actions, what we say, way we manifest ourselves physically, and the way we manifest respect, obviously has to be corresponded by what's inside of us, but the external part helps us to stay in contact with and to cultivate that sentiment inside. Is that clear? I think it's clear. Therefore, we have to remember this. What are the qualities, the characteristics internally that we should have with people we interact with on a daily basis? And what are the attitudes that can help me to nourish those characteristics that we need. With Lama Ganchen, I don't want to, absolute no way, to have an attitude of indifference. No, it's not good. I don't want it for myself. What did I do? Okay. So I'm not going to sit on the bed anymore next to him. Not only for that. Oh, when it happened once that I went to see my master, Trichan Rinpoche, and I arrived in his house. He received me in his house, American houses, so where you have an open space kitchen with a lounge insieme. So we were having breakfast, and I was going to do prostration. He said, "No, don't do it. There's no need." Well, I said, "Well, there's no need for you, but there's need for me." I don't know if if you don't mind, if you give me permission, I'll do it, because it's not merely a form of formality. If you don't feel like it, better not do it, because so it's not that the formal situation imposes that. I do it because it's good for me. Gives me an important feeling to me. So I did my 3 prostrations. When Atisha said, when you meet your teachers, preceptors actually is a specific word within the monastic setting. That means those who have taken the monastic vows. In this specific... Okay, so in this particular situation, it's talking about the abbot who gave you the vows. Cultivate the wish to serve them with respect. Why do I want to serve? Because it's an act of gratitude. Why do I have gratitude? Because I receive, and I'm giving value to what I receive. Are we following that? What's the best way to serve one's master? Is to put into practice what he says. It's the best possible way. Both those possessing eyes of Dharma and those first setting out upon the path, so those who are not our spiritual path, we didn't take refuge in that person or put our trust in them. But somebody who has more knowledge than us, a deep practice, but even those, and also those who are just starting out on the path, are to be regarded as your teachers. So it doesn't mean that you treat them as your teachers, but you treat them with respect. Because when you treat the other with respect, who benefits? Myself. One of the interesting things about treating other people with respect is it's the best antidote to our arrogance. As we said before, arrogance is born from our attitude of comparing ourselves with others. Look at me. Look at that. Look at him. Look at him, just arrived. He's only been practicing for 3 years. Oh, I've been doing this for 20 years, practicing for 20 years. What does it mean? What difference does it make? Nothing. If we compare ourselves with others, well, let me say it's natural. What happens is that at the end, we get into this mechanism with this, we just hurt ourselves. When I treat the others with respect, I open myself to the qualities of the others, to the qualities of the others, of being able to learn from the other. And I protect myself from my own arrogance. Because because arrogance is very harmful to us. It's one of those attitudes that can really block us. It's strange because the more arrogant we are, the more we compare ourselves with others and to see in which way we're superior to the others. It brings us inevitably to the attitude of finding defect in the others. And this brings us to a process of trying, and it takes along the path to protect our own ego, our own identity. And we become entrapped in this instead of... Is that clear? Just to say, if you like dancing, let's just say, what does it matter? What's better, to dance or to be the best dancer or special dancer? I don't know. For me, it seems that it's important to dance. But when one starts dance or do any activity, and you start to put the expectation of having to be good, you lose the expectation of dancing. Because what becomes important is recognition, then the recognition from other people. So your focus changes from the enjoyment to seeing the judgment of the others, and it becomes a kind of torture and tiring. And we need to be extremely careful to not reproduce this attitude on the spiritual path, because it can happen. I've just seen it. I don't like to say, but many, many times. Therefore, it's something that we all have to be careful of. Look at him. He did this. But also there. Look at him. He's also... So we have to be careful not to get into this mechanism. How do we do that? By treating everybody with respect, with gratitude, with humility. I don't need to compare yourself with me. The fact that you have great qualities doesn't take anything away from me. I recognize. I rejoice in your qualities. And I treat you with profound respect. Therefore, when you when you see your masters or preceptors, teachers, cultivate the wish to serve them with respect. Both those possessing eyes of Dharma and those first setting out upon the path are to be regarded as your teachers. It doesn't mean to say you treat them as your teachers, but you have a respectful attitude towards them. When encountering any other beings, look upon them as if they're bigger than yourselves. Look upon them as your parents or your children. In other words, try to relate to absolutely everybody with an attitude of affection and respect. It's not obvious. It's not even obvious or automatic within a family. But Atisha is helping us to develop this attitude. And as we said right from the beginning, when I interact with you, it's not about you, it's about me, principally. If I treat you with respect or not, what does it change? If you treat me with respect, what does it matter to me? Zero. To you, it's more, has a greater effect. When I treat somebody, when I treat another with respect, who changes principally is myself. Therefore, it's important for us to be able to have this awareness and to remind ourselves the material, it's not something, it's not insignificant or unimportant. The way we react with the material world determines and influence in a crazily in a crazy strong way our non-material part inside, our emotions, etc. So where we react verbally, physically, helps us to direct our own emotions and thoughts in a certain direction, in a beneficial direction. When we recognize that when we have sentiments we don't want to nourish, we embrace them, we acknowledge them, but then we try not to materialize them so that they gradually become weaker and weaker. Therefore, our behavior is something that matters to us, not to the others. I say this because very often we imagine that treat somebody with respect is something that has to do with the other. Why should I treat you with affection or respect when you're not this, that, and that? You're not like this. No, because I need to develop that attitude. Why do I have to develop respect? Because I don't want to cultivate indifference. I want to be able to receive and learn from others. I want to do what's good for me for that reason. But we need to reverse our internal dynamic to see that when I relate to another, actually the other's got very little importance. It's all to do with me. The reason I interact with in a certain way and not another way, it's got less to do with how the other behaves. It's more about what qualities I want to develop and how I want to react. There are two ways of living life. First is we react in the presence of others with a reaction to the past. I'm doing this because you said this. I manifest this emotion because of this. I'm making this choice because this happened. So in the present moment, very often with a reaction to what has already happened. When we live like this, we put an enormous weight on the others. I'm treating you well because you've been nice to me. I treat you badly because you've been horrible to me. And the other way to live life, it actually is more difficult, is the present moment is not lived as a reaction to the past, but rather as a conscious action towards the future that I want. The way in which I behave in relation to something, it was not in relation to the past, but with the awareness of something that I wish that there is with regards to myself and to you. For example, let's examine, let's say, talking to somebody, member of the family, friend, relationship in couples, work, just somebody. And we ask ourselves, what relationship do I want with that person? Do I want it based on faith, love, respect? Or do I want one based on suspicion, rancor, dissatisfaction, etc.? I want the first one. I imagine you too. But if I want to have a relationship based on transparency, friendship, and faith, and I find myself in a tense situation, the more I react to that which happens, I, I, I need instead to be aware. It's up to me to react with love, respect, when it's not easy, because that is what I want to construct. That's the kind of relationship I want. Even if you treated me badly, I don't want to get into that dynamic, because I'm not here to react. I'm here to act with awareness of the kind of relationship I want. Is that clear? Somebody can say, somebody can see that as being passive in front of aggression. If somebody behaves with aggression, sorry, how should I behave? What am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to react violently every time? There's a question. It depends. Let me give you an example. My personal experience is that I'm kind of strangely... So I've never been a sort of agitated person, quick to react. But at the same time, I've always, since I was very young, let's say I've always had like excitable people around me, hot-blooded people from Brazil to India to Italy. So even in the monastery in India, I saw fights begin left, right, and center. So people who were easily aroused. When somebody reacts with aggression, we firstly need to see where it comes from. Sometimes, for example, it's a way for the other person to get attention. Because when I interact with you, be it on the basis of attraction or aversion, attraction and aversion create a connection. So that can be done through tension. What happens is that sometimes entering in that dynamic of arguing, it maintains the relationship alive. In an unaware way, one may want to keep that connection and may try to find something to argue about. On the other hand, in different situations, it's important to make it clear that every action brings a result. So it's one thing being passive, but it's another saying, I'm not going to enter in this dynamic, but I do put my stop signs, my limits. I impose my limits. For example, I have a horrible character. I'm not joking. In the sense that if there's a situation of conflict, that's a bit heavy, my way of handling it is worse than entering into conflict. So I just end up being indifferent and neutrality. And that's even more difficult for the other person. So they come and argue and I just cut. I don't do it intentionally. It's part of my character. I also have to put some effort in doing things differently. But it doesn't happen all. But when it does happen, my tendency is to just cut. Unfortunately, in front of aggression, I've never seen that there's an easy solution. Once it happened to me, somebody had who was very aggressive, not towards me personally, but he was speaking to another. about another. So, okay, so he was aggressive, talking badly about another person, and so I received the aggression. So he turned out to be, this person was against me. So I was driving in the car, and we was alone, this person and myself. Well, I tried in a good way. Didn't work. Okay. Because at the end of the day, I don't say anything. Be quiet. But then it came back, and he went on and on about it, and I said, okay. All right, let me try the bad way, the angry way, the wrathful way. But I have to has to be realistic. So I banged the steering wheel. I did my performance of being really angry. And guess what? It worked, apparently. Well, the other person calmed down, and it was over. But a short while afterwards, I was instead of in front of a similar situation. The first one was very difficult for me, although I performed very well. It was very difficult for me because that's not my normal way of behaving. The second time, I thought, okay, worked the first time, let me try again. So I made the same scene. I did the same performance, but much more easily than the previous time. A short time afterwards, it seemed that the situation worked, but actually it didn't work. Because it was the same situation. And then I realized that without even thinking about it, I was about to react in the same way. So then I decided never ever again, because even if it's not, even though I have never wanted to react aggressively, the fact that I did it twice and the third time it came so automatically, never again will I do this. And what happens is that in one way or another you resolve it. But the fact that not reacting with aggression or resolving with aggression doesn't work. What we have to do is we have to, according to the session, find a way of making things work. I've found that patience, calm, respect, affection pays off. In the long run, it works. In the long run, that's the way it works. Otherwise, at times it's good to have fixed positions. Up to here, okay. Up to here, okay, but up to here, no. To set our limits. When we don't want to get angry or argue, how can I say? At times, we kind of subjugate ourselves to emotional blackmail. So if you do this, I'm going to get angry. Well, hey, get angry. It's not my problem. I don't know if you've ever heard that. Okay, get angry. Anyway, you get angry anyway, so what difference does it make? The important thing to us is to maintain a consistent behavior that's consistent with our internal attitude, but we shouldn't get into certain situations because they're neither good for others or ourselves. What does that mean? So, and that doesn't mean that to avoid certain dynamics, we have to subjugate ourselves to certain harmful dynamics. In my experience, instead, what works is to have a clear, the courage to have a clear position, to not react immediately and not to have to impose our view on the others.
consapevole anche della necessità e delle condizioni dell'altro.
Okay, I have to be aware of my own needs and also being aware of that of the other without getting into a conflictual situation. And somebody might say it's difficult, it's tiring to get into the tension of aggression. Consumes much more energy than in not doing anything. It's much more difficult and tiring. I understood once, I was here in Albagnano, I saw somebody, but it had nothing to do with the center. And everybody's thinking, ooh, who's it going to be? So somebody who has nothing to do with Dharma, and he has an attitude who reacts to me in a way I really don't like. He blackmails me, and I really don't like that. And also in illegal ways. So it's nobody here. So he threatens me. If you don't do this, if you don't give me this, I'll do this and I'll do that. And so on. So it was when we were trying to get various permits for the building here. And there was this situation. He asked the center to do something, not me personally. It was so he asked me to do a certain process. He insisted I had to do a certain process. And I said, no. It's not a question of money. So if something is missing in the plans, I can add it. I did actually get a bit angry, sort of, because the situation, if somebody puts my back to the wall, and how do we say, and blackmails me, hey, I'll do the opposite. I'm not going to play along. At least be transparent. Let's say it like it is. Don't do weird things, go around the houses to threaten and blackmail me. And that day I actually got angry. I got up. I was like a palm's distance away from his face. I started shouting. I really got angry. 20 seconds it lasted. And it ended there. And everybody in the room felt a bit uncomfortable because they'd never seen me like this. Anyway, I calmed down. I went to have a walk. It was something really strong for me. And I felt a tension, a pain here in the chest, something that really hurt. And I said to myself, if getting angry for 20 seconds, and talking to other people, and then I actually apologized to other people present. Well, they all said, oh, what was it? It was nothing. But something so brief caused me such harm. What would happen if for other examples of getting out? And then I took the commitment to myself, not whatever happens, I'll never allow myself to react in that way. Because it's not worth it. It's not good for me or the others. Talking afterwards with somebody who was there, I don't enter into the cycle of aggression. But the things are what they are, but I have to say things as they are and do what I have to do. In fact, that's what was done. But the attitude of anger is absolutely not worth it. Really not. Because we just really lose out. But seeing that very often we have we find ourselves, we have this conditioning, we have to find the right balance. We find ourselves in these kind of situations. I don't enter aggression, but I don't subjugate myself to the emotional blackmail. So I say what I have to say clearly. I know my position. But somebody might say, oh, it's easy to say, but really hard to do, sure. But at least we need to direct ourselves that way. This is just to say the way in which we manifest ourselves externally conditions the characteristics that we develop inside. And I really invite you all to think about what you want to be and to become, on the basis of which and that will determine the way you interact with other people. You'll agree? Therefore, when we meet other people, we try to react with respect, with love, with affection, because that helps us to develop the best part of us and to help us to be well, to try to avoid indifference, arrogance. The point is here, it's not a question of what we feel and what we think. So it's also a question of how we interact physically and verbally with people, because that conditions what happens inside of us. Okay. Okay. Last thing. Do not befriend those who act in harmful ways, but rely instead on true spiritual friends. Okay, so a friendship that leads you astray, where interaction with that person brings us to distance ourselves from that which we want to become. Doesn't mean say they're bad, but in that relationship, I am cultivating certain attitudes, certain characteristics, which distance me from what I want to be. Let's give you an example, a bit extreme. Somebody came to me and said, listen, Lama, with time, I generated awareness. I don't want to get drunk anymore. But I have a group of friends who I'm really fond of them. I've known them for ages. But I try to get on with them not drinking. And I see that, I realize that there's no common ground anymore, because the thing that bound us together was going out and drinking. I tried to go out with them and not drink, but it was worse than not going out at all. And so I don't know what to do. I don't want to betray my friendship with them, but neither to fall back into drinking too much. What shall I do? When we change when we transform, our interests change, our lifestyle changes, naturally, certain relationships are based on a certain lifestyle. We don't have any common ground. So however pleasant that relationship might be, it's a bit superficial. But if that friendship helps me to do things that are harmful to me, then it's better to have a distance. So it means that that friendship has more power to affect me negatively than I have to influence positively the other. So this is important for people with whom we interact on a daily basis. Ideally speaking, let's say, we should surround ourselves with people who have qualities that we want to develop. Joking a bit, somebody said, if you find yourself if you find in a circle of friends and you see somebody is if you find yourself better than everybody else, there's something that's not right. Because reacting with people who have characteristics we don't have helps us to have them. So it doesn't mean to say that we have acquaintances who don't have certain characteristics, that we need to abandon them, but when these relationships distance ourselves from how we want to be, where there's a relationship that reinforces the bad habits on our part, which we don't want to strengthen, at least temporarily, it's better to take a distance. Mainly because life changes. People transform. Maybe in another context, there could be wonderful things that arise. I think that's clear, no? But rely instead on true spiritual friends, which means try to get close to people who have the characteristics that you want to develop, without getting into dynamic of idealizing the other, because otherwise, and eventually, inevitably, you're going to point the finger at them, say, like this, the Sangha isn't what it should be, this isn't what it should be. So I've heard people many times saying in a spiritual center, this attitude shouldn't exist. And I said, well, why? Are we all enlightened? Like people say, you're Buddhist, you shouldn't get angry. So what do I say? What do I say is, I get angry because I'm Buddhist. Because if I were a Buddha, I wouldn't need to be a Buddhist. One is Buddhist because, not because they've already arrived at the desired result, because they're on the path. Because I shouldn't have the expectation that somebody who's striving towards something is already like that. But means surrounding ourselves with people who are walking along the same direction, so we can support each other. It doesn't mean absolutely that you shouldn't have relationships from different spiritual paths or religions or who aren't on the path. Where did I hear this phrase? Oh, look at that person. Well, a very good person, despite not being into Dharma. What does that mean? What are you saying? It means that somebody who isn't formally Buddhist, who doesn't have a certain vision of the world, should be in a certain way. It's senseless. There are wonderful people in any context, any religion or non-religion, without religion. We need to learn and receive from all sorts of people from different contexts. It doesn't mean to say that we need to be in our sect because we say Namo Guru Bhye. We must, more than anything else, try to have healthy relations which help us to grow on our path. And it's natural. And slowly, as our interests change, relationships transform. This is absolutely normal. Now I'm in a bit of a bind because I'd like to go ahead with the text, but we need to conclude, unfortunately. This text, the beauty of this text, whatever verse you take, works. It's a standalone text, so I invite you to read it, to something which we should see again and again. Let's go to the last verse of the text. It says, in the company of others, guard your speech. Be careful what you say. When you are alone, guard your mind. In the company of others, guard your speech. Whenever you are alone, guard your mind. So it's the same word in Tibetan. When you're with others, be careful what you say. When you're alone, be careful what you think. Be careful means give the direction, have awareness of what's happening, and direct things towards you wish to happen. I see what I say. I think before I speak. And when I'm alone, even though I remember the other day somebody said, so that there's this attitude of somebody who speaks, who's like autopilot, who speaks to themselves. They have to do this, have to do that. So be careful also when you speak to yourself. Be careful of your speech. But apart from that, we need to have awareness of our thoughts and actions and direct them, because we can do it. Depends on our choices. I wanted to thank everybody for these few days, but in general, and remember one thing. The main reason for which this center exists, the main reason for which I'm here, doing what I'm doing, and everything goes along with it, because there is a deep faith in the capacity of each and every person to transform themselves. There's a faith in each and every one of you. I have faith in our and your capacity to transform ourselves, yourselves, to grow, to improve, to enter ever increasingly more in positive interdependence. Therefore, I ask you to have faith in yourselves and say, I can do it, and celebrate every small conquest. So every time something works, and to celebrate that helps us with our self-esteem and to move forward. The only reason, really, if it weren't for that, because there's faith that everyone use the teachings, the practices of Dharma to improve yourself, oneself, and to interact better in the world. There's no better reason than that to keep a center like this going. I can tell you, it's a very hard job. So Julia, who's part of the management, will attest to that. She knows what's behind it. Therefore, what I want to say is, it's not an obvious thing. It's not easy financially, organizationally. Me personally, might not seem, but I'm very shy. I like to be alone, in silence. I don't like to talk. I like to share Dharma. And doing this, I receive so much. And as we say, for having the heart open and your mind open. Because believe me, I've learned so much more teaching than studying. I've received always so much. And these days we've shared, in reality, we haven't been learning technical stuff. What we're doing together this time and other times, it's more of a kind of, it's like a collective analytical meditation where we get together and I'm like the spokesman to get into a process of analysis of things that we know, but unfortunately we forget. So, okay, it can be new for somebody. Therefore, I thank each and every one of you, and we ask you, and to have faith in yourself, not to be frightened of being happy, and to live life to the full in a virtuous way. So, and also to have the strength to be tough on yourself. So no, here you don't go. Stop right there. Sometimes we need to be able to do that as well. But gently at the same time. Therefore, this is my wish. And there's another request which I mentioned the other day, which I can't, I have to, but in order I have to overcome my own taboos, difficulties. I'm very grateful to this center because as an entity, apart from a legal entity, which is made up of all of us, the center exists on the basis of each one being here. Everybody who comes, participates, in all ways. Within that, okay, so if we were a company, a commercial company, the profit would be something. For us, the profit would be each one transforming in a positive manner by interacting in a certain way with the center itself. That's what gives me joy. That's the profit. Well, otherwise, nothing could persuade me to have to confront what we have to confront, the difficulties we have. But at the same time, okay, this is also a bit taboo for me. The economic side of this, I'm very proud of the fact, as I said the other day, that we did it in such a way that the teachings are free. So we don't get into that mechanism of quantifying everything that we receive in monetary terms. But we do have our costs. So we don't just say, hey, well, we'll pray for you, we'll send you blessings. So for every kilowatt consumed, we'll say certain mantras. We don't quantify. We don't give a certain product for a certain amount of money. But, however, we need to respect the material side. My dream, as in slowly we're coming to this point, but really we're still at the beginning. I would like the center to be self-sufficient on the basis of people who receive benefit from it. And my request is, if you receive any benefit from this, through the practices, the place, the teachings, everything together, do your part in thanking, how? Helping by creating the conditions, helping to create the conditions that the center may continue materially. When you put a price, the dynamics change. It's not very nice. what you have is is equivalent to what you take. But it's something. But when you're giving without wanting to receive is the act of giving. So what I wanted to ask is not to take part to take part in the garden of generosity, which we have. The garden of generosity is not to say to myself, so it's to give, to help conditions. And how much should you give? Something that's not too much and not too little. So for one person, give me one thing. For one thing, it can be another thing. But to support the center can continue to grow and to help. And we find ourselves, okay, let me not say we're in not a crisis, but in a situation we have a big challenge. So it said that because as a company can fail because it grows too quickly or doesn't grow at all. And where we come in the first category because the numbers have exploded. I don't want to get into all the details, etc. But I do participate in this. In the past, I did it fully. Lama Ganchen said to us, "Oh, very good. You're teaching 3 aspects of the past." So I told him everything to Lama Ganchen, and he said, "But very nice. But that's not your priority. One day you can do it. At the moment, your priority is accounting. That's what you have to do. You counting and management. Because when you have to teach, because when the day comes and you have to put all your efforts into teaching, you have to keep an eye on those who have been charged with management and accounting." Okay, so I kind of know the problems, but I better not put me into the kitchen. But with regards to accounting and management, I am familiar with the issues. Therefore, would I ask you, and to ask yourselves, do I have gain benefit from this, yes or no? Do I want to continue? Do I want this to continue? Do I want others to benefit? That's the way to do it. And one of the ways to do it is, at the end of the day, hey, money is energy, so it counts. Therefore, according to your possibilities, I ask you, it's not an obligation, it's not an imposition, it's actually a request for awareness. It's something which is important. I'm not normally here to say, well, they say, why don't you put publicity onto YouTube, so at least, why don't you put advertising on YouTube? And I say, because then we'd pay for the channel. And I have to battle not to put advertising on our YouTube channel for the same reason for which I don't put a price on the teachings. It's exactly the same thing. But it's different, somebody might say, because advertising, it's not so different. Because in the moment in which I put advertising, the dynamic is different. Because it changes the dynamic. Because I'm making the video to receive and not to give. Because I start watching the income from the video. But no, I make the video because I want to offer and to maintain this purity And knowing weaknesses is one of the reasons for which I don't want to put advertising, because when I see something, because there's a danger. I'm not saying it's inevitable, but there's a risk that somebody puts out a certain video in order to maintain, to get more income from advertising. So what I'm saying, together, we can together maintain the center. Is that okay? Garden of Generosity. I want to thank you, all those who make it possible for be here every day. Those who clean in the kitchen and the reception, those who do the accounting, the management, a whole load of things. So we're here calmly, comfortably enjoying the teachings and the gratitude towards all those people. So the taboo Lama was talking about, there was a taboo about talking about money, to make it clear. Okay, now we make our dedications. And traditionally, when a course finishes, there's a moment in which where everyone comes to say goodbye. It's not a moment to chat, it's just a way to but unfortunately there's an initiation, an empowerment this afternoon, and first of all I have to do my own self-empowerment, so we have little time. So I need to prepare for that. So we'll make our dedications. Let's dedicate to each one of us can have the clarity and the willpower and the awareness to put into practice the teachings and to transform our being in a virtuous way, to be able to enter into a positive interdependence with ourselves and everything around us.
Losan tempe dreme sasumgi drove munsel tato ne gyurchi kewa kunto yanda lamadan dralme cheki pela longche ching sadan lamge yente rabzone dorje change kopan Nyurtoba sho nimo dele tsendele nime kuyan delek shin nintzen takto delek pe kuncho sumki chingilo kuncho sumki ngodrubutsol kuncho sumki trashishon.
At dawn or dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness.
At dawn or dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle all the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness. Ripetete dopo di me.
Repeat after me. Semchutudro.
Lam tudro. Lam la parche. Mion warsho. Possa la mente diventare il Dharma.
May the mind become Dharma.
Possa il Dharma diventare il sentiero.
May Dharma become the path.
Possa il sentiero essere libero da interferenze.
May the path be free from interferences.
May the mind become the Dharma.
May the mind be
May the Dharma become the path. May the path be free from interferences. Come Lama Ganchen ogni tanto diceva,
as Lama Ganchen often used to say, see you sometime, see every moment.
tanto ci vediamo in ogni momento, ricordiamoci che
And let's remember
il modo che due persone siano vicine
what makes two people be near. It's not the physical proximity, it's the fact that their minds go in the same direction.
direzione che possiamo andare insieme è quella del Dharma.
And the direction that we can go together is in the direction of Dharma.
Grazie a tutti, adesso chi vuole può venire.
Who would like to come can come quickly to say goodbye.